I never thought one moment in a grocery store parking lot would change the trajectory of my entire life. But that's how things seem to work in small towns. Quiet days, predictable routines. Then suddenly, something happens that makes you question every assumption you had about yourself. I'm 24, born and raised in a town so small it barely shows up on Google Maps, where the biggest event of the year is the 4th of July parade. I always thought my life would be simple. Work, maybe college one day, then the same quiet life as everyone else. Nothing prepared me for her. I'm writing this because I can't sleep anymore without replaying our first meeting, like it's a movie I'm terrified to forget. It was late September, still warm enough that the breeze smelled like cut grass. I had just finished a long shift at the hardware store and stopped by the local grocery store to grab something quick for dinner. That's when I saw her, standing next to her car, staring at a flat tire like it personally betrayed her. She looked different. Not from here. People in our town have a certain look in their eyes, a kind of resignation, like they've already accepted whatever life has chosen for them. But she had this sharpness, focused, aware. Her posture was confident, but her expression was frustrated enough that I couldn't just walk past. "You okay?" I asked, feeling instantly stupid. Obviously she wasn't. She turned, eyes catching mine with this intensity that made me forget how to breathe for a second. She was older than me, not dramatically, but enough that I noticed. Beautiful in a way I didn't have a word for. Composed, but human, like she'd lived through things that only made her stronger. "I'd be better if this stupid tire didn't explode on me," she said with a short laugh. "I'm honestly tempted to just set this car on fire and walk home." That laugh dug itself under my ribs. "Want some help?" I offered. "Only if you're not in a hurry. And only if you don't judge me for having absolutely no idea what I'm doing." I shrugged. "I work at a hardware store. This is practically a warm-up." She smiled, and something about that smile made my hands shake as I crouched down to loosen the lug nuts. We talked while I changed the tire. Nothing too deep at first. How hot the day still was, how she moved here 3 weeks ago, how she was still adjusting to small-town life. She told me her name, Elena. It fit her. Elegant, a little mysterious, the kind of name that felt like a story on its own. When I finished, she handed me a cold iced tea from a pack she'd just bought. "For saving me from roadside despair," she said. I almost said something smooth, something clever. Instead, I opened the can and said the dumbest thing possible. "Glad to prevent arson." She laughed again, really laughed this time, and leaned against her car like she had all the time in the world. "Can I ask your name, hero?" she said. "Ethan," I replied, suddenly aware of how sweaty and dusty I looked after work. "Well, Ethan," she said, "I owe you one." I didn't know then, but that moment, her saying that, would stick with me for months. That tiny promise, that tiny spark. As she drove away, I stood there with an iced tea in my hand, trying to figure out why my life suddenly felt like it had a new gravitational center. I didn't know who she really was. I didn't know what she was running from. And I didn't know that helping with a flat tire was the simplest part of the story. Because everything that came after, that's where things got complicated. The next time I saw Elena, it felt almost scripted, like the universe wasn't even trying to hide what it was doing. I was shelving boxes at the hardware store when I noticed her standing near the paint aisle, looking completely overwhelmed by the wall of color samples. She was wearing a faded denim jacket and holding her sunglasses in her hair. She looked both casual and impossibly put together at the same time. "Oh," she said when she saw me. "The tire guy. I have a name, you know," I said. "I remember," she replied with a small smirk. "Ethan. And I'm not pretending I'm here by accident. This is the only hardware store in town. I figured if I wandered long enough, you'd materialize." I nearly dropped the box I was holding. "So what'd you need?" I asked. "Well," she lifted 2 paint swatches. "Is warm beige actually warm? Or is this just a lie paint companies tell people who don't know what they're doing?" "You painting your place?" I asked. "Yes. While trying. I moved here to get a fresh start, but apparently even fresh starts require knowing the difference between almond cream and buttermoon." "That last one isn't real," I said. "It absolutely is," she answered. She showed me, and sure enough, there it was, buttermoon. We walked through the aisle together. I explained what I knew. She listened so intently that for a moment I forgot this was just a conversation between 2 strangers. It felt familiar, comfortable, too comfortable maybe. She kept asking questions, Not just about paint, but about the town, my job, what people did for fun. I told her the truth. Not much. She laughed at almost everything I said, even when I wasn't trying to be funny. When she finally picked a color, I carried the cans to the checkout for her. You always this helpful? She asked. Depends, I said. On what? On who's asking. She paused, just long enough for me to feel that pause everywhere. Good answer, she said quietly. She paid, then turned back toward me. You know, I'd offer you lunch as repayment, but I don't want you to think I'm bribing you into doing free labor. My heartbeat did a weird thing. It's not bribery if I agree voluntarily. She raised an eyebrow. Careful, I might actually take you up on that. She walked out, leaving me standing there feeling like gravity had shifted underneath my feet. That evening, when the store closed, I found myself driving past the neighborhood she'd mentioned. Not to stalk her, not to see her, my brain kept repeating that lie. But I did glance toward her house as I passed. The lights were on. Music was playing inside. Warm, yellow, inviting. I kept driving, cheeks burning like I'd been caught doing something I wasn't supposed to. The worst part? I didn't want to stop thinking about her. And I definitely wasn't ready for what happened next. 3 days passed before I saw Elena again. I wasn't counting them, not exactly, but small towns are predictable. You see the same cars, the same people, the same routines. So when someone doesn't appear, you notice. I kept telling myself she was probably busy settling into her new place. Still, part of me kept expecting to turn around at work and find her browsing light bulbs with that curious half-grin she always had. It was Friday evening when she finally appeared, again in the most unexpected way possible. I had just finished mopping the floor of the store when my manager, Todd, yelled from the front, "Ethan, someone's asking for you." My stomach tightened. Nobody ever asked for me at work. I walked out, drying my hands on my jeans, and there she was, leaning on the counter, dressed in a simple black t-shirt and high-waisted jeans, hair tied back loosely like she'd thrown it up without thinking. "There you are," she said, smiling warmly. "I need your professional opinion." Todd glanced at me like, "Seriously?" Then walked into the back. "What's up?" I asked, trying to sound casual even though I could feel my heartbeat in my neck. She lifted a small cardboard box onto the counter. A brand new set of paint rollers and brushes. "I bought all the wrong stuff," she said. "Apparently painting a wall requires more than just enthusiasm and a playlist of sad songs." I laughed. "You're not wrong." "So," she continued, leaning closer, "would it be completely insane if I asked you to come over and help me figure this out? Just for an hour. I'll even feed you." I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to go. I wanted to. Too much maybe. But there was a 10-year age gap. There was her whole mysterious past I knew nothing about. And there was me, some guy who'd never been interesting enough to catch the eye of someone like her. But then she said, softly, "You're allowed to say no, Ethan. I won't be offended." That did it. "I'm off in 10 minutes, I said. "I'll follow you." Her face lit up. Not flirtatious, not suggestive. Just genuine. Warm. Like she was relieved. We drove to her place. A small rental house tucked between two massive maples. It looked cozy in a way that made my chest ache. She led me inside, apologizing for the mess, though the mess was mostly unopened boxes and a blanket tossed across the couch. "This is nice," I said honestly. "It'll be nicer once my furniture arrives," she replied, dropping her keys in a bowl. "But I'm making progress. Slowly. Very slowly." She handed me a soda and walked me to the living room wall she wanted to paint. There were already chaotic test patches smeared across it, almost like she'd been experimenting without a plan. "I may have panicked," she admitted. We laughed, and I explained how to tape the trim properly, how to prime the roller, how to work in vertical sections. She listened closely, too closely. I found myself nervous under her attention. When we finally started painting, she asked, "Do you ever feel like you're supposed to be somewhere else? Like you took a wrong turn somewhere in life?" The question hit harder than I expected. "All the time," I said quietly. "I just never know what the right turn would have been." She kept painting, but her voice softened. "Same." We fell into silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was grounding, like the room held its breath for us. At one point she stepped back to admire the wall and accidentally got paint on her cheek. Without thinking, I reached forward and wiped it off with my thumb. She froze. I froze. Her eyes met mine with a sudden intensity that made my chest tighten. "Thanks," she whispered. And just like that, The moment passed, but it didn't disappear. It settled into the air, something unspoken, something waiting. That night, as I left her house, she walked me to the door. "Same time tomorrow?" she asked. I nodded before my brain could overthink it. Because whatever this was becoming, I wasn't ready to let it go. The next evening, I found myself standing in front of her door holding a six-pack of sparkling water because I panicked and couldn't think of anything else to bring. I must have looked ridiculous, but when she opened the door and saw me, her smile spread so naturally it made the embarrassment worth it. "You brought gifts," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "Either you're incredibly thoughtful or incredibly nervous. Why can't it be both?" I said. She laughed, closing the door behind me. The house looked more alive than the night before. She'd unpacked a few framed photos, placed a couple of books on the coffee table, lit a candle that made the whole room smell like cedar and vanilla. It felt warm, lived in, like she was finally letting the place become hers. "So," she said, handing me a roll of tape, "ready for round 2 of Elena Makes Questionable Home Improvement Decisions?" "I'll try to prevent disaster," I replied. We worked for a while, taping, painting, stepping back, adjusting our technique. She made sarcastic comments about her own lack of skill. I pretended not to be distracted by how her hair fell over her shoulder when she leaned forward. Every few minutes, we'd bump into each other by accident, both apologizing too quickly. At some point, she put on some music, soft indie rock, the kind you'd listen to on a long drive. It filled the quiet spaces between us, but it didn't replace them. It just made them feel intentional. About halfway through the wall, she suddenly said, "So how old are you, Ethan?" I felt the question coming eventually, but I still stiffened. 24, I said. She stopped rolling paint and looked at me for a long second. "You thought I didn't know you were younger?" she said softly. "It crossed my mind," I admitted. "Does it bother you?" She sighed, not irritated, not dismissive, more like she was thinking through something. "It doesn't," she started, then shook her head. "I just don't want to be stupid." "Stupid how?" I asked. Her voice lowered. "You're young. You have time to figure things out. I'm at an age where I'm supposed to have already figured things out. People expect different things from us." "Who cares what people expect?" I said before I could stop myself. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to the kitchen, grabbed 2 glasses, poured us water, then handed me one. "We barely know each other," she said. "And you don't even know why I moved here." "You can tell me," I replied gently. She looked at me, really looked at me. It was the first time I saw uncertainty in her eyes, like she wasn't sure if it was safe to say what she was thinking. "Maybe," she whispered. We went back to painting, but the mood had shifted. Not in a bad way, more like the air had thickened, charged with something unspoken. She stood closer to me than before. Once, when I stepped backward, my shoulder brushed hers, and she didn't move away. Neither did I. When the wall was finally finished, we stood side by side, admiring the work. "It actually looks good," she said, impressed. "You doubted me," I teased. "No," she corrected. "I doubted myself. You're surprisingly competent." We ordered pizza, sat on the floor, ate straight from the box because she hadn't unpacked her plates yet. She asked me about my childhood. I asked her about the places she'd lived. She told me about her job in graphic design. I told her about the store and my dream of maybe going back to school someday. At one point, she said, "You're easy to talk to, Ethan." I didn't expect that. Why? Because most people, I don't know, they talk to hear themselves speak. You talk because you're actually thinking. I didn't know what to say to that. No one had ever accused me of being thoughtful before. When it got late, I stood to leave. She walked me to the door again, but this time she lingered, close enough that I could smell the paint still drying on her skin, mixed with that cedar vanilla candle. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for being here." "You don't have to thank me," I replied. "Yes," she whispered, "I do." There was a moment, just a second, where we both leaned in an inch too close. But then she stepped back. "Good night, Ethan." I swallowed. "Good night, Elena." And I left, heart racing, wondering how close we came to crossing a line neither of us had defined yet. Over the next week, helping Elena became part of my routine, though I told myself it wasn't. I told myself I was just being friendly, neighborly, helpful, that I was doing what anyone would do. But anyone wouldn't spend nearly every free evening at her place. Anyone wouldn't memorize the shape of her laugh or the patterns of freckles on her shoulders when she wore tank tops while unpacking. Small towns make time stretch in weird ways. Days feel slow, but moments feel sharp, like they're meant to be remembered. And with her, every moment felt like that. One evening, I arrived to find her in the backyard, kneeling in the grass, trying to plant a row of flowers. She looked defeated. "Okay," she said when she saw me. "Before you say anything, yes, I did Google how to plant a flower bed. And no, that did not help." I crouched beside her. "You bought shade flowers for a full sun yard." "How was I supposed to know the difference?" she protested. "They all look like flowers." I laughed, and she shoved my shoulder lightly. "Stop enjoying this." "I'm not," I said, still grinning. "Well, not too much." We replanted everything together, this time in the right spot, and she told me stories about her old apartment in Chicago, her favorite coffee shop, her least favorite winter. She talked about her ex briefly, but only to say, it was messy in the way that things get messy when two people want different lives. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want her to feel like she owed me anything. But I did ask, why here? Why move to this town? She paused, pressing dirt around a flower. Because I needed noise to stop. I needed quiet. I needed space. And I needed to not be around anyone who knew the old version of me. That stuck with me. Later, we sat on her porch steps, watching the last of the sunset disappear behind the trees. She handed me a lemonade she'd made herself. Too much lemon, not enough sugar, but I drank it anyway because she was proud of it. "Do your friends think you're crazy for spending so much time with some random woman who can't paint or garden?" she asked. "I don't have many friends," I admitted. "Just coworkers. And they think I'm crazy for much less impressive reasons." She gave me that soft smile again, the one she rarely used. "Well, I'm glad you're here. I mean that." I nodded, feeling warm in a way that had nothing to do with the summer air. Then she leaned her head back and looked at me. Really looked. Her gaze traveled from my eyes to my mouth and back again. My hands tensed around the railing. "Elena," I whispered, unsure of what I was supposed to do. She blinked, turned away quickly, and cleared her throat. "Sorry. I shouldn't have." "You didn't do anything wrong," I said. She stood abruptly. "We should go inside. Mosquitoes are starting to eat me alive." But I knew that wasn't the reason. Inside, she became quieter. Not distant, just thoughtful. Like she was holding on to something she wasn't ready to admit. She hugged her arms around herself at one point, and I had the strangest urge to pull her close and tell her she didn't have to explain anything. Instead, I helped her hang shelves in the hallway. It was late when I finally told her I should go. She walked me to the door, as always. But this time she hesitated, fingers lightly touching the doorframe. "Ethan," she said softly, "do you ever feel like you're getting in too deep with something you don't understand yet?" "Every day," I admitted. She nodded, exhaling slowly. "Me too." I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know if it was a warning or a confession. But I knew one thing. I was already too deep to walk away. "Good night," she whispered. "Good night," I said, wishing she'd asked me to stay. As I walked to my car, I caught her silhouette in the doorway, watching me leave, like she wanted to say something else. She didn't. Neither did I. The next few days felt strangely heavy, like the air between us had changed. Not in a bad way. More like something delicate had shifted and neither of us wanted to touch it too suddenly. I kept telling myself she just needed space, that maybe I'd shown up too often, stayed too long, cared too much. But every time I tried convincing myself to pull back, she'd send me a text. Not long messages, never that. Just, "Are you free tonight?" Or, "I think I broke something again. Please save me." So of course, I kept going. One evening, she asked if I could help her move some boxes from her car. When I arrived, she was sitting on the trunk, her hair tied messily, wearing an oversized hoodie like she'd had a long day. "You okay?" I asked. She gave a half laugh. "I had a day from hell. My boss dumped a project on me last minute. Then my laptop decided it hates me. And the grocery store guy put raw chicken next to my strawberries." "Like, why? Why would he do that?" I cracked a smile, and she shook her head, exasperated. I swear I was one inconvenience away from breaking down in the parking lot. "Well, I'm here now," I said. She looked at me with this expression, tired, relieved, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. "Yeah, you are." We carried the boxes inside. Most were work supplies or kitchen stuff she still hadn't unpacked. When I set one down, something slid out from the top, a small notebook. It fell open, and by reflex, I bent to pick it up. Before I could close it, a few words caught my eyes. I don't know how to start over without losing myself again. I froze. She noticed instantly, snatching the notebook from my hand. Not angrily, but protectively. Sorry, I said quickly. I didn't mean. It's fine, she whispered. It's just personal. Of course, I said. I shouldn't have looked. She sighed, rubbing her thumb over the notebook's edge. I write things down when I don't know how to say them out loud. I waited, not pushing, not prying. After a moment, she sat on the floor beside the boxes, pulling her knees to her chest. She looked smaller somehow, like the woman who always seemed so composed finally let the weight slip for a moment. Do you know what it's like, she said slowly, to build a life with someone and then one day realize you weren't even part of your own story? That you just existed in the background of someone else's plans? Her voice didn't crack, but it wavered. Slightly. Enough. My ex, he wasn't a bad person. Not at first. But he made every decision. Every choice. Every argument ended with me apologizing. I stopped recognizing myself. So I left. I moved here because I needed somewhere quiet. Somewhere I could be someone again. I sat down beside her. Carefully. Not touching. I'm sorry you went through that, I said. She gave a long breath. You want to know the stupid part? I promised myself I'd stay away from anyone new. Especially anyone younger. Especially anyone who could get hurt because I'm still rebuilding. She turned toward me with this painful honesty in her eyes. And then you showed up. And I don't know how to handle that. I felt the words hit deep. I didn't say anything right away because the wrong answer could break something fragile. Finally, I said, you don't have to handle anything right now. I'm not expecting a label, or an answer, or anything. I just like spending time with you. That's all. She stared at me for a long moment, long enough for my chest to tighten. Then she leaned her head lightly on my shoulder. Just for a second. Maybe two. But it felt like the world went quiet in that moment. Thank you, she whispered, for being gentle with me. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't want to scare the moment away. And then, just as softly, she pulled back. I should make us dinner before I start crying, she said, trying to lighten the mood. I smiled. I can help. No, she said, standing up, brushing off her jeans. You've done enough for one night. Just keep me company. So I did. We cooked together. Well, she cooked, and I stirred things incorrectly. She complained playfully, corrected my technique, flicked water at me when I teased her. The heaviness from earlier didn't disappear, but it settled into something real, something deeper. When I left that night, she didn't just walk me to the door. She hugged me. A full, slow, warm hug that neither of us rushed. And when she pulled away, her fingers lingered on my arm just a second too long. Good night, Ethan, she said, voice soft. Good night, I managed. But that night, lying in my bed, all I could think was, we weren't pretending anymore. Something between us had changed. I sat in my car for a full minute before turning the engine on. My hands were still trembling from what had just happened in the diner. I had come there hoping to get some answers, maybe even a chance to clear the air. Instead, I had watched Lily go pale, keep her distance, and bolt out the door like I was a threat. The drive home felt longer than usual. Every red light reminded me of the gaps in my memory. Every passing car triggered flashes, headlights, a curve, rain on the windshield, someone yelling my name, my heartbeat hammering. But nothing solid enough to help. When I pulled into my apartment building's parking lot, I stayed in the car again. My thoughts ran in circles, like they were trying to dig themselves deeper instead of out. What did she mean by "don't follow me"? Why did she look at me like she was scared? What exactly happened the night of the accident? Inside my apartment, I stared at the wall. The place still felt like it belonged to the version of me before the car crash. Neat, organized, structured. I wasn't any of those things anymore. I felt unstable, disassembled. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Stop trying to talk to her. This is your last warning. I froze. No name. No context. No explanation. Just a threat. I immediately called the number. It went straight to voicemail, then disconnected entirely. Either blocked or a burner phone. My heart rate sped up. Someone didn't want me near Lily. Someone who knew enough to have my number. I dialed the only person I could trust with this. My older brother, Noah. He picked up on the second ring. Yeah? You good? No, not really. Someone just threatened me, and Lily's acting like she's scared of me. A pause. Okay, Start from the top. I told him everything. The gaps in my memory, the hospital visits, the nightmares, running into Lily, her reaction, the text message. Noah stayed silent for a few seconds, which was rare for him. Then, you need to talk to the cops. And say what? Hi. I got a creepy message and my ex is terrified of me. They'll ask what happened and I don't have an answer. Then you need to find one. Easier said than done. He sighed. Look, I can drive over there if you want. No. I'll figure it out. Evan, you don't have to do this alone. I'm not. I just need to think. We hung up. The apartment felt too quiet. I opened my laptop. If my memory didn't want to give answers, maybe something else would. I dug through old folders, photos, messages, anything with Lily's name. I found pictures of us, hiking, cooking, laughing on the couch with our ridiculous Halloween costumes. None of it felt threatening or dark. We looked happy. So where did everything go wrong? Then I saw a folder I didn't recognize, recovered, created 2 weeks after I was released from the hospital. Inside were dozens of video files, some corrupted, some blank thumbnails, and one labeled, Night of, MP4-inch. My breath caught. I clicked it. The screen went black for a second. Then shaky footage appeared. Headlights, rain, the sound of my own voice yelling something I couldn't make out. A shadowy figure ran across the road. Tires screeched. The camera tilted violently. A scream, not mine, and then impact. The video cut off. I felt cold. Someone had been there. Someone else had been involved. Maybe Lily saw this happen. Maybe she knew something I didn't. My phone buzzed again, another unknown number. This one wasn't a threat. It was a location pin. An abandoned farm road 20 minutes outside town. And a single message. If you want the truth, come alone. My pulse hammered. Whoever this was, they knew everything. And they were ready to talk. But truth usually came with a price. I stared at the blinking location pin for so long that my phone dimmed twice and nearly locked itself. 20 minutes outside of town. An abandoned farm road. Come alone. Whoever sent it knew exactly how to get my attention, not with threats, but with answers. I should have called Noah. I should have called the police. I should have done anything except what I already knew I was going to do. I grabbed my keys, slipped on my jacket, and left. The drive out of town was quiet, too quiet. Streetlights faded behind me until the only illumination came from my headlights cutting through the darkness. The road gradually turned from pavement to gravel, crunching under my tires. Surrounding me were endless empty fields and silhouettes of dead trees reaching upward like skeletal hands. When the GPS chimed that I'd reached the destination, I slowed to a crawl. A narrow dirt path branched off the main gravel road, barely wide enough for a truck. I turned down it. 100 meters in, I saw a black SUV parked beneath an old oak tree. It didn't have plates. My stomach tightened. I parked a few meters back and stepped out. The air was damp and cold, carrying that late autumn smell of wet leaves and rust. A figure stepped out from behind the SUV. At first, the darkness made it impossible to tell who it was. But as I got closer, the faint moonlight revealed a face I hadn't expected in a million years. Lily's older brother, Marcus. He looked older than I remembered, heavier in the shoulders, dark circles under his eyes, jaw clenched so hard it looked painful. Marcus, I asked. He didn't flinch. You came alone. You're the one who's been messaging me? Yes. There was no hesitation, no attempt to hide it. Why? I asked. What's going on? Why is Lily terrified of me? What happened that night? He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding the breath for months. You almost killed her. The words hit me like a punch. My voice cracked. What are you talking about? The doctor said I hit a guardrail. You did. But before that, Marcus stepped closer. You and Lily were in the car together. My chest tightened painfully. No, that's not possible. I would remember. You don't remember because you went through the windshield. She pulled you out. She saved your life. The world started spinning. We were together that night. Marcus nodded. You two had a fight at the bar. Not your usual kind. You were drinking more than you should have. She tried to take your keys. You grabbed them anyway. I staggered back. Drink. Fight. Keys. Pieces clicked together in my mind like jagged shards of glass. No. You drove off. She followed you in her car. When you hit the guardrail, she ran out to get you out of the wreck. That's when another car came around the bend and nearly hit her. She dove out of the way. My breath shortened into shallow gasps. She wasn't hurt, Marcus continued. Not physically, but she thought you were dead. She thought it was her fault. Then your memory loss, the confusion, you showing up again. He shook his head. She panicked. She didn't know what you'd remember, or if you'd blame her, or if you'd hurt yourself again. I pressed my palms to my forehead. My skull felt too tight. Why didn't she tell me? She tried. A dozen times. But every time she saw you, she saw the crash. The blood. The way you weren't breathing. Marcus stared at me like evaluating whether I was safe to be around. She's not scared of you hurting her. She's scared you'll break if you learn the truth the wrong way. Silence stretched between us. Only the wind moved, brushing dead leaves across the dirt. I didn't threaten you, Marcus added. But I did tell you to stay away. I thought distance would help both of you. Clearly, it didn't. I swallowed hard, my throat burning. I didn't know. I swear to God, Marcus, I didn't know any of this. His face softened for the first time. I believe you. He stepped back toward the SUV. She's at our mother's cabin. She needed space. If you want to talk to her, really talk, go tomorrow morning. Not tonight. You're shaken, and she doesn't deserve another scare. I nodded numbly. Marcus got into the SUV and started the engine. As he pulled away, I stood alone in the dark, heart pounding, memory fragments swirling like ash. I hadn't come here for closure, but I'd gotten the truth. And now, everything depended on what I did next. Things had been tense for weeks. After that argument at the diner, I felt like we were constantly walking on eggshells. I kept replaying her words in my head. You don't understand me at all. And part of me knew she was right. I was young, impulsive, still figuring things out, while she had decades of life experience, scars, and lessons I couldn't even imagine. But I loved her for exactly that. Her depth, her intensity, the way she saw the world. It was a Friday evening when I finally decided to make a move. I left work early and drove to her favorite little bookstore downtown. It wasn't much, a small, cramped shop with shelves stacked from floor to ceiling, the smell of old paper and coffee mixing into a strangely comforting aroma. She always talked about how she could spend hours there, losing herself among the stories. I found her in the back, thumbing through a section of poetry. The moment she saw me, her eyes softened a little, but she didn't smile. Hey, I said, unsure of what else to say. Hey, she replied, her tone cautious. I took a deep breath. Look, I've been thinking about us, about how I've been careless, about how I sometimes don't see the bigger picture. But I want to try, really try, to understand you. She looked at me for what felt like an eternity, then slowly nodded. I've been scared, she admitted. Scared that you'll run when things get complicated. I'm not running, I said firmly. I want to face the complicated with you. I want to grow with you. There was a long pause. I wanted to reach out, touch her hand, but I hesitated, respecting the distance she needed. Finally, she closed the book she was holding and looked up at me, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Okay, she said. Let's try again. We walked out together, hand in hand, into the crisp evening air. I could feel a weight lift off my chest. That night, we talked for hours, about everything and nothing. Our fears, our dreams, our pasts. I realized that being with her wasn't about perfection. It was about honesty, patience, and being willing to meet halfway. Over the next few weeks, we slowly rebuilt our connection. I learned more about her life, the choices she had made, and the regrets she carried. She listened to me too, really listened, and for the first time, I felt like we were truly partners. We went on little adventures around town, Sunday markets, small hikes, late-night coffee runs. Every moment felt like we were weaving a story together, layer by layer, mistake by mistake, joy by joy. One night, as we sat on a hill overlooking the town, watching the lights twinkle like stars on the ground, she leaned her head on my shoulder. I'm glad we didn't give up, she murmured. I kissed her forehead and whispered, neither did I. I realized then that love wasn't about rushing, about grand gestures, or about being perfect. It was about showing up, day after day, even when it was messy, even when it was hard. And with her, I finally understood what that meant. The next months were a blur of small, beautiful moments. I remember our first winter together, snow falling gently outside, us curled up on the couch with mugs of hot chocolate, laughing over a terrible romantic comedy she secretly loved. She taught me how to slow down, how to appreciate the quiet moments, how to really see people, not just their surface. We celebrated birthdays, small victories, and even the occasional disappointment. Life in a small town had its limits, but we learned to make every day meaningful. I met her friends, who were wary at first of this younger guy she had chosen, but over time, they saw our bond, our respect for each other, and they warmed up. There were challenges too. My career ambitions sometimes clashed with her plans. We argued, we compromised, we apologized. Every time, we came back stronger, more aware of each other's needs. It wasn't always easy, but nothing worth having ever is. One evening, while cooking dinner together, she suddenly laughed and said, "Remember our first fight? At that diner?" I chuckled, recalling the heated words, the stormy eyes, the tension that had almost broken us. "Yes," I said. "How could I forget? And now look at us," she said, shaking her head in disbelief, a smile lighting up her face. "We're happy." I looked at her, really looked, and realized I had never been happier in my life. Age, experience, past mistakes, none of it mattered. What mattered was that we had chosen each other, every single day, through the mess and the joy. A few weeks later, on a warm spring afternoon, I took her to that little hill where we had shared our first real heart-to-heart. The town stretched out below us, quiet and beautiful, as the sun dipped low. I pulled a small box from my pocket. "I know we've had a rocky start," I began, my voice trembling a little, "but I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" Her eyes widened, tears brimming. She laughed, a sound that made my heart soar. "Yes," she whispered, hugging me tightly. We sat there for a long time, holding each other, letting the wind and the sunlight wrap around us. In that moment, I realized something important. Love isn't about age, experience, or timing. It's about choosing the person who makes your heart feel whole, over and over again, no matter what. As we walked back down the hill, hand in hand, I felt a sense of peace I had never known before. We had faced doubts, fears, and mistakes, and we had come out stronger. Our story wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And for the first time, I knew that life with her would be an adventure worth every step. Looking back now, I understand that love is messy, unpredictable, and challenging, but it's also transformative. And with her, I found not just love, but a sense of home, a sense of purpose, and a depth of connection I never thought I could experience. We didn't have it all figured out, but maybe that was the point. Love isn't about having everything perfect. It's about finding someone who makes all the imperfections worth it. And I had found her,